Because remember, the mind functions 24/7. It only gets stupid and stops working when you've got to say something intelligent whether it's something you like. Nothing. Nothing smart to say. But other than that, like, it's going on all the time. We have these conversations with ourselves, and as we navigate this thing, it's like, oh, she's prettier. Oh, she's got a nice body. Oh, she's this. This one's this. This one's this. There's always somebody prettier, somebody better, somebody more this, somebody more that. But we are buying into that PR. And like I say, we do this to ourselves for a good 20-odd years, 20 to 30 years. In some instances, people just run with it because that's all they know. And they never do kind of hit the brakes at any point. And for some of us are more resilient than others. You know, if you look at the things we go through in life, like for one woman, and like we, with the exception of one or two, we're a group of women in this room, you know. So for some of us, for one person, a miscarriage is the end of the world, that it throws you into a depression or whatever. For another person, you are there and you get up and you move on. For one person, that's a car accident. They'll never get behind the wheel again. For the other person, you bounce back. So we designed differently in terms of our resilience and the way we relate to things and so on. So it's the same with that PR that we spin for ourselves. For many of us, we will continue along this journey, believing that we are not good enough. And the more we believe that, we get into relationships, we have children, and so on. And through no fault of our own, once again, that is our frame of reference. That is what we bring into our relationships. That is how we engage our children. That is how we engage our friends, through no fault of our own. We've all experienced, you know, having that friend that is so high maintenance. Well, oh, listen, I'm going to see so-and-so today, like, let me just brace myself. And if you happen to be an empath, you're shepherd. You've got to go home and, like, where's the email for? Like, seriously, I need to snatch the shit out of this place because, like, right now, I'm done. Right? And it comes from, unfortunately, most of the time, we just go through this thing so blindly, we do not know better. Then there's the workspace. And like, now I'm being micromanaged, now I'm not being given clear instructions, now I'm being picked upon, now I'm being told I'm not doing my job well enough, now I'm this and now I'm that, and it just adds to that dynamic of like, hey guys, like, I mean, I was never this dumb before, like, I'm so stupid. Wait, does somebody used to take me like, shit, like, you literally like, never used to be dumb. Guys, I was good at what I used to do. In my last job, like, I was on top of things. Like, I got this job and I thought I'm gonna come in here and make a difference. And when they recruited me, like, I checked all the boxes, you know, and in terms of what I was told this job was about, I thought I was gonna come in here and I was going to make it happen. And like now it's like I can't even staple a document. Like, what happened? You know. But what we do not realize is that throughout we are stumbling through this whole thing. Whether it's the interpersonal relationships, whether it's the self-conversations, whether it's the workspace or whatever it is. We are stumbling through it blindly. And I say blindly because we seldom get to stop and check ourselves. We seldom get to have a pep talk with ourselves. Not until you are completely out of it and you don't want to get out of bed. And you are in bed and like, okay, so it was fine for the weekend, but now like it's week 2 and like I still don't want to get up and I still don't want to go anywhere. And now it's a month later and like even the doctor's refusing to give me this Bilingane, you know, and I really don't want to go back to that place and you know, this place is breaking me down, this relationship is breaking me down, like it's everything that seems to be breaking me down. And what I don't understand about all of this is that, again, granted, there are different levels of resilience, but that at any point when I find myself in a downward spiral, the control lies within me to hit the brakes on that and go, okay, how do I navigate my way out of this? Sometimes we've bought too much into that PR that we simply do not see beyond that. And that is where the emotional intelligence comes into play. Now, when we talk about emotional intelligence, there's I would say the textbook definition, but I'm wanting to focus, this comes from this thing on term. Okay, so I'll have to make do with this. So the definition, the way in which it's described, and like for me, there's a much simpler understanding of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the power to understand yourself. Because when you understand yourself, you are better able to make sense of your interactions with the world outside you. Okay. So the way in which it's defined is it's said that it's the ability to recognize and understand emotions and the skill at using this awareness to manage yourself and your relationships with others. In essence, it's understanding yourself, understanding what makes you tick. It's being able to actually go back and retrace those conversations and those PR and those words that you bought into. Let me use an example of, you know, a term that gets thrown at women that are much stronger and more assertive and more outspoken and bolder, you know, socially and in the workplace. You could be labeled a bitch. And the thing about that term, if we could just sit with it for a minute, what is wrong with being a bitch? Socially, everything is wrong with being a bitch because we've been conditioned that being a bitch means that you are not a nice person. It means that nobody likes you because you're mean. It has got all sorts of negative connotations. But until you stop and you take away the emotional connection to that word and you look at what that word means to you, as a person, in a social context, you want to project a certain image of yourself, isn't it? Otherwise, we wouldn't be getting up and brushing our teeth and washing and cleaning up and going to present like a polished, put together front. Whether it's in the workplace or socially, we want to be perceived in a certain way. We want to be seen to be intelligent, we want to be seen to be articulate, we want to be seen to be something of value. We want people to perceive us in a certain way. Do you agree? And for this reason, if you could imagine an imaginary quadrant, all right? The top half of the quadrant is usually what we want people to see, all right? So typically, as a human being, you want, on the one hand, for people to perceive you as being a nice person, okay? You want people to perceive you as being a nice person because typically you want people to like you, am I right? We want people to like us. We want people to perceive us as nice people, etc., etc. But we also want to be perceived as good at what we do. So whatever it is that we do, we want to be perceived as good at what we do, etc., etc. And this is kind of the outward persona that we project to people, which is why, you know, we want to be liked. So in order for us to be liked, we put on this smile, we put this whole put together look, and we put ourselves out there as, hey, I'm nice, please like me. And on the other hand, please, you know, respect me because I'm really good at what I do, etc., etc. But the bottom half of the quadrant, sorry, it's 11:11. That's my big wrong. So, the bottom half of that quadrant is typically, on the one hand, our own PR, you know, your own critical voice, going, yeah, well, girl, actually, you're not all that. And like, hey, have you seen those marks on your skin? And have you seen, you know, did you see so-and-so's skin? Like, you know, that's actually how skin should look, you know. Did you see so-and-so? She's got 3 children. Well, nah, you've got 1 child and look. You know, and that's the voice. And like, you think you're really good at what you do, but no. You know, can we have that? It's that internal voice based on what you've been told over time that actually you're not a good person. Actually, you're not that likable. Actually, you're not that great at what you do. Da, 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 da. And that's the internal voice. There's the outward part of you now. These are the internal conversations happening. And then there's this other quadrant where you will be called out. So those are the labels, like you're a bitch, you're a this, you're a fake, you're this, you're that. And typically, this is a part where people will call you out. And the reason it will hurt is, unfortunately, because there's an element of truth to it. When something somebody says triggers an emotion, it's usually because they're touching a nerve. But when we understand and we unpack and we make sense of it, you actually realize that that's where the real power lies. Because if we were to stick with the example of the bitch, for argument's sake, you get called out for being a bitch, right? But what you are projecting externally is, I'm a nice person, please you must like me, and this, that, and the other, and on the other hand, I'm really good at what I do, etc., etc. But the voice that's going on inside is like, actually, you're not that likable, you're not that good, etc., etc. It's the opposite of what it is that you are putting out, what you're projecting externally. And what you get called out on, this word is like, the term bitch, it's like, so it means that I'm actually not a nice person. You see, it's basically the opposite of what it is that we are putting out there. So now, if you were to just unpack that quadrant for a minute and look at it and go, okay, I want to be likable and all of these things, but in order for people to like me, I almost have to end up sacrificing myself. For people to like me, I don't have boundaries. So because I want to be liked, people take advantage of me. People disrespect me. People think that I'm a walkover. And I allow it because I don't want them to think that I'm a horrible person. So I allow it. Then, on this side, like, I want them to respect me, I want everybody to think I'm good at what I do, etc., etc. And when people start going, you're such a bitch, it's because it contradicts what you want people to think of you. But it all goes back to what you think of you. Okay? It actually starts with what you believe about yourself. The fact that you are overcompensating on what others think of you and you're prepared to compromise yourself speaks to the lack of belief in yourself. Does it make sense? It speaks to the lack of belief. And what I mean by that is, if you truly know who you are, and somebody calls you out for being a bitch, you go, hell yes, I am one. But the thing about it is, I am a nice person, but that nice person has got boundaries. You cross that nice person and you will be a bitch. So all of these are me. I am a nice person and I'm a bitch. And I'm very good at what I do, but I also have my insecurities. And the reason for that is it goes back to equilibrium in life. Like, we all would love to eat that cheesecake every day for breakfast, but it has consequences. So if you go into one, balance it out. And like, it's not just one cup of Black Forest or whatever, you need to make sure that it's an ongoing thing. The balance is there. So for all that self-doubt, the self-recrimination and all of that, you need to be able to tap into the fact that when you develop your capacity for emotional intelligence, it's important to understand that what is playing out there in terms of my interpersonal relationships, what's happening at work, what's happening in my relationships, etc., is actually a reflection of what's happening inside here. Because I don't understand myself well enough, when somebody calls me something, I attach to what that person says I am. Because if I knew who I am, what you say, I'm able to go, yeah, sorry, I am that. Or, actually, no, that's not mine, thank you very much. You're able to weigh it up and take what you need and leave what you don't need. The same goes for the guilt and the shame that we carry around. We believe that we are supposed to be super women. Again, a social construct. Society wants us to believe that a good woman wakes up at the crack of dawn and sees to her family. You get up, you make lunch, you make breakfast, you do this, you do that, and that is before you even go and put in a full day at the office, where you are supposed to be superwoman there too. And because you are this nice person in the workplace as well, because so-and-so is cheeky and doesn't, and answers back and has got boundaries, they don't want to ask her, so like, hey, do you mind? You find yourself taking on more and more and more. So not only are you up first thing in the morning attending to family, you then either dropping your kids off at school or whatever, you make your way to work, you give of yourself there. When you're done there, you're already thinking, you could be sitting in a meeting, if those of you that are married, between you and your husband, who's going to get the SMS that says, "Sissy, the hour is finished, and please stop at Spine, get some sunlight and some milk." Who's going to get the SMS? Your husband? I don't think so. So even while you're sitting and having to run those meetings and get those presentations ready, you're already having to think about what's for supper. And if there's no bread, what am I going to give the children for lunch tomorrow to carry to school? And what am I going to do about this, and what am I going to do about that? And you get home, and you've got to be attending to everybody. There could be homework to do while you're cooking supper, while your laptop is open and you're attending to emails and finishing off things that you bring home from work. And this becomes our normal. So we therefore fail to understand when we are so drained and you cannot get up and you've got nothing to give. It's because you are not replenishing. Okay? So just in the interest of time, guys, I know that there's still quite a bit that has to go into the day-to-day. I'm wanting to get through emotional intelligence, what it is and what it really entails, and then hopefully just give about 10 minutes for just some interaction, and I'll wrap it up there. Okay. So, in terms of defining what it is, this thing is small. It's said to be, so the ability to recognize and understand your emotions and the skill at using these emotions or that awareness to manage yourself and your relationships with others. It's the capacity to be aware of, control and express your emotions. So you're aware of your emotions. It's not just about being aware of it. The first step is actually being aware of yourself. But then how do you navigate those emotions? You know, how do you make peace with the fact that you are a sensitive person? How do you make peace with the fact that you are somebody who's not emotionally available, whatever? Whatever it is about you, that's where the understanding starts. It starts with understanding yourself. Then it's about the capacity to be aware of, to control and to express your emotions, and to handle your interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. And I want to come back to the issue of empathy, okay? Because I believe that empathy is an absolute superpower. But as an empath, those of you that are empaths, you're likely to be one, you will know how painful it is to tap into other people's emotions and make them yours. And it's important to self-preserve in this regard. Otherwise, you will keep giving of yourself until there's nothing left to give. And people will still make you feel bad because there's nothing left to give. Okay? So, it's the key to both personal and professional success. The term is basically traced back as far back as 1964 at Columbia University when they did a study, but it was made popular by Daniel Goleman when he wrote his book on emotional intelligence and why it can matter. There are 5 characteristics to emotional intelligence. There's self-awareness, there's self-regulation. Self-awareness is just being aware of who you are, what makes you tick, etc., etc. There's self-regulation. How do you navigate that? How do you manage yourself? Okay, it's being able to regulate, it's being able to bite your tongue, or being able to speak when you need to speak. Okay, there's motivation. Motivation is understanding what drives you to do the things you do. What will make you get up in the morning and go and volunteer at a children's home or a dog shelter or whatever? What motivates you? What drives you? What is that thing that you will do if it wasn't for the money, if money wasn't an issue? And I think that motivation also becomes a very important element in re-identifying your passion in what you do. So typically when I coach people in a professional environments, unfortunately. So corporates, just to give you some context, I'm not very popular with corporates. Like we don't get along because as an emotional intelligence coach, I have an issue with corporates, with the fact that they don't do what they say. In the sense that they have values, beautiful values. You bring in a consultant and come and make it look pretty and put it on these boards and everything, but we don't live those values. Our values are like we grow people, you know, you are there, you can express yourself, you can do the, try expressing yourself, you can be hello. This is not, you know, this is not Gibbs. So don't come here with that Gibbs nonsense. So you basically are sent off to go and develop yourself, and then you come back and you're told to take that knowledge, put it in a box, and just get back into your square hole. So this is typically why corporates and I don't get along, because I call that out. And when I'm usually called in a corporate space to engage, it happens very early where you're able to suss out if the leadership of the organization is telling you as a consultant, can you please work with these people? You know, there's no work ethic, there's no this, there's no that. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that usually that's the corporate culture. Because when you join an organization or team that has a good work ethic, there's no time where there's a good work ethic. There's no time to be nitpicking, that you were 5 minutes late, you left 10 minutes early. It's about output and productivity. And all of us have experienced how ignited you become when you're functioning in an environment like that, because you bring your worth to the table. And you are not competing with so-and-so who's doing the same thing or the same instruction being given to more than one person. So typically, I find that these characteristics would be lacking in organizations who very much express that they want to do this. And usually when I talk about emotional intelligence, typical questions that I would get in a corporate space is like, Angela, so are you saying that IQ is not relevant? And like, I've never said that IQ is not relevant. I'm saying that the fact that IQ is taken in a corporate space as the holy grail, at the expense of emotional intelligence, is the reason why human beings get broken down and get left to feel like nothing. If you look at the statistics, there is an alarming number of people that enter the workplace healthy, in a good mental space and everything, and in a matter of time, matter of sometimes months, sometimes a year or two, that same individual that came in very confident, very happy, very committed, becomes a shadow of themselves and is starting to develop symptoms. So you start to develop ulcers, you start to develop migraines. Pay attention to this in the workplace. Start to develop migraines. You are staying out of work because the thought of going to work traumatizes you at a level you don't understand. So you need to start paying attention to those kind of things, because those values need to be able to, the reality is that yes, you need this job because you need the salary. But in order for you to sustain this, you need to change how you are engaging in this environment. And in order for you to be able to understand how to engage the environment, you need to understand what it's doing to you. And for you to understand what it's doing to you, you need to understand yourself first. So typically in a coaching environment, I would want to, it's a conversation, it's a two-way conversation. Like, you know, what is going on in your space? Because typically what is happening here is going to play itself out at home. It's going to play itself out in environment, in relationships and so on. The reason being that it's the same person. It's the same person that has got to operate in this toxic environment, that has got to go home and be a mother to their kids. And when you're lashing out at your kids and you're impatient and the child is like, Mama, the helper's name on the Sunday night. Yes, ma'am. My teacher said I must bring this to school tomorrow. And your socially conditioned reflex to that is to get up at that helper's line and figure it out. Once you've made peace with the fact that actually I'm not Superwoman, guys, like there's nothing, so where do you want me to get this thing now? Like, where are we going to get it now? And tomorrow you need to be at school at this time. You're going to have to tell your teacher that you did not tell me. And we often think that, no, we can't do that. My kid is going to be embarrassed and so on. Guess what? They might just learn that I need to take responsibility. Mama, I forgot my lunch at home. Oh, sorry, ma'am. You'll eat it when you get home, okay? What do? We run. We're going to leave what we're doing at work. We're going to go home. We're going to run home, pick up the lunch and go and take it to school. And how often do the schools tell us, please don't do this? If your children have forgotten something at home, they need to learn to do without. So it's important to understand these kind of things, because the more we kind of accommodate and accommodate and accommodate, we compromise more and more of who we really are. So those characteristics are self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skill. And the way in which I usually explain this is that it has to start with you. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. You cannot hope to be genuinely sympathetic and understanding of another person when you don't have sympathy and understanding for yourself. When you don't have those boundaries that are like, babies, can you please just give mommy 45 minutes? I'll set the time for you. I really just need to rest. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in that, you know what, as tonight, I'm really tired. Can I have noodles for dinner, whatever it is. It's not something you do every day, but it's important to be able to check in with yourself. That today I can't. Today I really cannot do this. And you find that as you develop those at a very personal level, you take it into the workplace because you start to engage the workplace at a more genuine level. So as you develop your self-awareness, you develop authenticity because you are being very genuine with yourself. When you are authentic with yourself, you are authentic with the way you engage outside of you. You are led, and it may sound a bit cliche for kind of the more left-brain people, but it will resonate with a lot of you. You are led by spirit, not by ego. That top half of the quadrant is you being led by ego. The bottom half of that quadrant that calls you out on your bullshit, that's spirit. That's your higher self calling you out, going, hey, actually. When something does not resonate, whether we believe in it or we call, I don't get this nonsense, we all know as human beings that we sense things, we feel things, we are feely creatures. And the reason for that is precisely because you have your intuition. For some of us, we are a lot more tuned into our intuition, but when you're not tuned into your intuition, you will ignore it at your peril, basically. Let me put it that way. You will ignore what your gut is telling you at your own expense. And your own expense is those headaches, those debilitating headaches. I can't function anymore because this migraine is not going away. These ulcers are doing this. As women, we carry a lot of trauma in our womb, which explains why we have issues with our periods, with our menstruation. We have cramps, we've got this, we've got that. We carry our trauma in our root chakra, in our base chakra. That's where we carry a lot of trauma as women. And because the reason for that, very simply, and I'm sure the other speakers might speak to this, is very simply that is where life is started. That's where life is initiated, and that's where life is nurtured. So when as we go through the motions and we store the different traumas, and sometimes we go through physical traumas and those kind of things, and we store it there, and if we do not practice consciously letting go of those traumas, we find that it manifests in the period pains, it manifests in the fibroids, and it manifests in the complications in pregnancy, etc., etc. Because whatever trauma you don't resolve, so here's the kicker about this. Any trauma that your ancestral line, and especially with us as women, that has not been healed, gets passed on. Please pay attention to this, guys. It may sound very out there, but if there's trauma in your line, in your bloodline that hasn't been healed, if your mother didn't step up and say, I will take it on, ask her. Ask her. If she had not stepped in, it would have passed on to the next generation. So until such time as we learn to face up to whatever our challenges are, it doesn't speak to us all having to become izango. We don't all have to become spiritual healers. We all have different callings in life. It's about being able to tap into that. And when I speak of emotional intelligence, for me, emotional intelligence is about tapping into the full package of who you are. You know how we buy the fanciest phones and the fanciest cars? and we only WhatsApp and we go onto Facebook and Instagram. We don't use 80% of the capacity of this very fancy phone. Even our cars, we buy this latest car and it comes with all these things, but hey, the window goes up and down, I know how to operate the radio, maybe cruise control here and there, but we don't know how to read for our car to tell us what the tire pressure is and so on. We don't, the same with ourselves. As people, we don't tap into the full capacity of who we are. And very often, it's because we are listening to what the external voices are saying rather than tuning in. And it's not about spirituality or Buddhism or whatever it is. Whether you are Christian or whatever it is, it's about spending that time and going within and paying attention to what that inner voice is telling you. So there's the authenticity in self-awareness. There's being led by spirit and not by ego. And in a corporate space, we've all heard this, the hard facts versus the soft skills. Corporates are interested in the hard facts. What's the bottom line? What are the volumes? Have you met your targets? Have you done this? Have you done that? Soft skills, go to HR, go to employee wellness. Yeah. Hard facts versus soft skills. And typically the reason for this is because it's IQ at the expense of EQ. Look at the likes of a Richard Branson, who's established his brand completely out of the box. Completely out of Richard Branson's like, you're tired, okay, go home, rest. You know, if there's stuff to do, you can do it. Like for me, and this is why I say like corporates don't like me, because me, I like when I talk to teams, I encourage teams to function that way. You know, tap into your emotional intelligence, know yourself, know who you're working with in the team, know what strengths people bring to the table. Work to each other's strengths instead of against each other's weaknesses. Function as a collective, you know, as a unit, rather than at each other's expense. Because here's the thing, if you've ever experienced working in a dynamic like that, it's an experience you will never forget. For you may go to other organizations and you keep going, yo, guys, I once worked with people like this. And you know, if you drop the ball, they're the first people to say, yeah, that's nonsense. You know this. But it's the same people who, when somebody else goes, yeah, but what nonsense is this? They go, hold on. Who are you? And like, what is this going to do with you? No, it's fine. You're not happy with that, it's fine. We are dealing with it. Cheers, we'll come back to you. They will protect you at all costs, but they will call you out. The same goes for our friendships and our relationships. The strongest of friendships, relationships, and so on, is when you've got those elements. When inside here we close that door and we're like, right, this is not on. This is not how we do it, etc., etc. But when you step out there, people are like, yeah, but what about so-and-so? You're like, yeah, what about them? We're dealing with those issues, it's fine. Do you mind just giving us some space to deal with it? In those teams that ensure that we deliver, and if you are the weakest link will be dealt with here. And more often than not, in a community like that, people that cannot take responsibility for themselves will typically not last in an environment like that. They exit by themselves because they are not comfortable with being called out. They're not comfortable with, but those that are able to see what is happening will thrive in an environment like that. So you then have your, so those hard facts versus soft skills. That's your self-awareness element. With your self-regulation, it's about checking yourself. It's about understanding that, oh, you know, I really need to just put a filter on the way I say things, because like not everybody's equipped to receive it the way I say it. Or sometimes we'll actually be defensive about it, and we'll say to people, oh, that's who I am, take it or leave it. And then we don't understand when people are not comfortable around us and so on. Remember, when you develop your capacity, you're developing your most authentic self. And when you develop this most authentic self, it will draw the right people towards you. It's like if you look at these plants that are before us, there are some that will see the beauty in the cactus, and there are others that will like, well, no, man, it's got thorns. There's some that will look at these things and like, me personally, I'm a roses person. How a rose is going to heal you, like, or you would look at it. You understand? So it's about understanding that we are all different, but that there's space under the sun for us all. It's about understanding that I do not have to be, I'm not going to become the best person that I can be by eliminating the next person. I don't have to eclipse you or overshadow you in order for me to shine. We can all shine. And in the most functional relationships and the most functional teams, it's when you understand that. It's when you understand that you are good at this and I can back you up. And I'm good at this and you can back me up here. It's about being able to support each other. So the self-regulation is about checking yourself. It's about suspending judgment. There are things that as a human being, again, our social conditioning is like, hey, being homosexual is a sin and it's wrong and it's this, that, and the other. And you sometimes find that it's got nothing to do with the person. You may be uncomfortable or vehemently be opposed to their choice of lifestyle. But when you understand that, it does not change who the person is. They are still a beautiful, beautiful person. And who they sleep with, how they choose to do it, how many people they choose to, it's got nothing to do with you. It's none of your business. So when you develop your capacity, you also basically develop the capacity to understand what is your business and what is not your business. Like, how does this affect you? It doesn't. So it's about being able to check yourself. It's about suspending judgment, and it's about thinking before you speak and before you act. That's self-regulation. Motivation is about understanding what drives you. What are you passionate about? Okay. Empathy is about understanding that you cannot give something that you don't have. If you do not have any empathy, like sometimes, guys, we are human, eh? So sometimes we say things and we do things that we are not very proud of. Like you look back and you're like, oh, girl, you know, you should have danced on those tables. Like, next time, not so much publicity juice. Like, it's about understanding that you are likely to do things that it's not your greatest moment. Be gentle with yourself. If you've decided that, actually, my child, I'm not going to drive to school for your lunchbox that you forgot at home, or whatever those type of decisions, when you have to turn around and say to your boss, listen, so you gave me this to do yesterday, you gave me this to do the day before, I've been taking work home for the past 3 months, I've been working at home and at the office, and you just keep piling my plate. Can we please have a conversation? Because when it comes to performance evaluation, my other pet peeve in the corporate space, you're going to tell me that I didn't meet my KPIs, and you're going to conveniently forget the 5,000 other things you gave me to do. But we don't want to do that because, like, we'll just keep accommodating and shrinking ourselves to accommodate what we think other people want. Yet, when you start pushing back, and like, so you're giving me another instruction, would you like me to finish this or do you want me to do this? There are ways to do this, okay? You don't have to become like Miss Thing overnight here. And it's also about understanding, are you a soft-spoken person? Does that make people perceive you generally as somebody that can be taken advantage of? Are you a loud, outgoing person that people perceive as no nonsense or whatever? How are you perceived, and does that align with how you perceive yourself? Because that is very important. With empathy, you cannot give others something that you don't have yourself. For me, it's the most underrated superpower is empathy, especially when you start with yourself. When you're able to give yourself empathy, you'll be able to relate it to other people. But if you cannot genuinely give yourself empathy, you cannot genuinely give it to other people. If you go in, somebody will be going through something, like, oh, shame. And like, it's not a genuine shame, it's not anything, because it's not, you're not being your authentic self, okay? It helps you understand that it's not always about you. So, if as women you experience the notion of people disliking you, unfortunately sometimes it's other women disliking you. Just for the hell of it. Sometimes you don't even know what they are. You walk into a room for the first time. And it's like, oh, did you see? Did you see how she was? Did you see how she's full of herself and this, that, and the other? Okay. It's unfortunate, but the more you understand yourself, you'll understand what's okay. It's my height. So when I do walk into a room, I do like go, and yes, I do shake it, and yes, and no shame. Some people are not going to like that, but hey, you do you. That's my trait. It's about being able to understand that as human beings, we project onto others our own issues and our own insecurities. Okay? It's about owning what's yours. You own it, warts and all. If you're not a perfect human being, surprise, surprise, none of us are. If you're not a perfect human being, it's about owning that. Okay? And it's about not taking on what is not yours. So if it doesn't align with you, if it doesn't resonate, it's not yours. I mean, if you happen to be if you're a heterosexual female in this room, and somebody says, oh, you're lesbian, right? It won't. But if you're in the closet, right? It will trigger. You get this, okay? And empathy enables you to connect authentically. Because you are authentically connected with yourself, you are able to genuinely connect with other human beings. Because you're okay with people that don't like you. You gravitate towards those that do. You attract towards yourself those that resonate with who you are. And then there's social skill, which is the capacity to establish genuine relationships. In other areas, they call it being able to influence others. Being able to influence others is either manipulation, or if you are a genuine person, people will do as you do, not necessarily as you say. You may say something, but if you're not, people will watch, and they'll see, but you said this. You know the story of the crab, like, no, who walks sideways? You can't walk sideways, people are going to laugh at you, while the parent is walking sideways and watching the child to move forward. Now, the journey of emotional intelligence, tapping into your emotional intelligence, I found the most beautiful quote by the author Khalil Gibran. He says that facing up to ourselves is simultaneously the most courageous, the most terrifying, and the most liberating thing you could do for yourself and others in a world where you could be anything. Choose to be yourself. It's terrifying because you've got to face up to those things that people say you are, that you don't really want to face up to, okay? So in closing, basically what I want to say is that as human beings, we are born with 5 natural emotions. And because we are told not to be like this or not to be like that, over time, we adapt those emotions. So it's said that when a child is born, a child is basically born with just 2 fears. Try and think of a baby. A baby is born with only 2 things that it's scared of. The fear of falling, that will explain how often a child, will imagine they're falling and they'll do this. Okay, they're trying to counter the fall. And the fear of loud noises. So if you startle a child with a loud noise, the child will start crying. But it's said that there are 5 natural emotions. Now I've told you the rest of the stuff, some of the stuff we're born with, the rest of the stuff is social conditioning. It is said that anger is a natural emotion. Anger is what causes you to witness an injustice and go, no, but you can't do that. Anger is what makes us resonate with the women that are being killed and these things, the injustices that are happening, okay? And with a natural emotion, if you are not able to find healthy expression for it, if you're not able to express anger in a healthy way, so if what triggers you is murder of women, etc., so it angers you, you may choose to get involved in a cause or to do something about it, or just to be more vigilant and look out for younger girls and so on. But when you are told that you should not be angry, you start to repress those emotions. You suppress those emotions, you repress those emotions, and what it results in is rage. So when anger cannot express itself naturally and organically, it manifests itself as rage. People that lose it. You'll hear some people that will tell you that they blacked out and they lost it. And, you know, by the time they came to, they've done something unspeakable, okay? Grief is a natural emotion. Grief is what enables us to make peace with losing things in our lives, whether it's people or whatever. To give you a stupid example, your favorite pair of earrings, you lose one. You feel my pain. You feel that pain. Yeah? You felt it. Grief is what enables you to go, sure, I really like those earrings, but like, I can no longer, this will no longer serve me. It enables us to move on. When you repress grief, and like if you take this to the extreme of losing someone, and like, no, you must be strong. You know when people are grieving, and somebody rubs you and gives you tissues and tells you, don't cry. You repress those emotions when boys are told not to cry. Grief, when it's not able to express itself, manifests itself as depression. You become depressed because you have not been able to express that grief naturally and in a healthy way. Okay? The third natural emotion is envy. It's interesting because the Bible is like, thou shalt not envy. But envy is a natural emotion because when you envy someone, you're like, oh, wow, she's got such, how does she look that good after 4 kids? How is she doing this? She's achieved a PhD, she's done this. Envy inspires you to become better. But when you are not able to find a healthy outlet for envy, it manifests as jealousy. Because jealousy makes you want to kill that person so that you replace them. You want to be the steering, not that person, and not understanding that there's different steering roles. Okay? Fear is a natural emotion. Fear cautions us. We know that if we walk into traffic, it's not going to end well. We know that if a cobra walks into this room and we want to be a superhero and go and talk to the cobra, hey, it's not going to end well for you. Okay? Fear causes us to be cautious. But when you are not able to express that naturally and in a healthy way, your fear becomes panic. So you start to freak out, okay, and you're not able to handle it. And the last emotion is love. Interestingly enough, love is who we are. Love is what we are. But when it is not, we have not developed a healthy way of loving. And I would want to take that a step further. When we are not able to love ourselves first, love becomes very conditional. And it becomes something that we use to manipulate others. And it becomes obsession. So you obsess about people loving you. You obsess about partners and so on. And you fail to understand your own worth and your own value in this equation. So, in summary, it all starts with you. Be gentle with yourselves. Know who you are. A very valuable exercise is asking yourself the question, who am I? But you're not allowed to answer in terms of your name. You're not allowed to answer it in terms of your gender, your profession, your social status. When you take away all those labels and you're faced with the question, who am I? What answer comes up? Ladies, thank you very much for having me. Any comments, any questions? How was that?
It was very insightful. I quite liked it. And I don't have the words to describe yeah. It resonates. I can relate.
Thank you. Yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I don't know where we went. So, on the fear quote or emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman, Goldman. Ah, guys, a beauty place. I want to join you guys. I'm liking these chairs. It's so nice. I'm on Facebook. My name is Angela Sobey. My surname is Sobey, S-O-B-E-Y. So I realized just because I just jumped in there, jumping on the old emotional intelligence thing, a bit of background on myself. I've worked as a management consultant since 2008. We've serviced mostly the corporate space and so on. The whole passion for emotional intelligence was born precisely out of what I found as consultants we have been called to do in the corporate space, but the culture of the corporate space does not resonate with that. But it was also, it coincided with a very personal journey. So the whole quadrant with the whole bitch and the superwoman and all of that, that's my personal quadrant. That was my own work that I had to do. So I've now just, I'm in the process of setting up my own business, and the coaching is part of it, which is based on emotional intelligence, and it entails profiling. It's about doing a profile where you understand yourself. It's about understanding the challenges that you're navigating and how you navigate those challenges, because there is no silver bullet that I can give you and say, if you do this, it will work. There's human dynamics. So the whole point of coaching is precisely so that you go and you're like, hey, go, I tried that, it didn't work. These were the reactions. So that it becomes very important. So at this point, I'm on Facebook. I'm in the process of setting up my Facebook page. I can communicate that, but you can find me basically on Facebook. And I have said that she did ask me to bring like flyers or business cards and so on, and I was let down by I had sort of ordered them on Wednesday, and I was told I can only get them next Wednesday. So yeah, so that was a bit of a letdown. But my contact details, please do feel free to get them from her and just WhatsApp me, and I can chat from there.